Welcome to Community Matters on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell. Today, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of marijuana use in Hawaii. What policies should Hawaii adopt? Our guest for the show is Gary Yabuda with the Hawaii High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. Welcome to the show, Gary. Nice to see you.
Well, thank you, Jay, and thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
Absolutely. Drug policy is an important social, medical, and legal issue, a community issue. And it is important that we and all cognizant government officials understand its pros and cons for Hawaii, since it's in play, apparently, in the legislature. First, Gary, can you tell us your background? Because it's very important that we know who you are.
Yes, I'm the executive director of the Hawaii High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, also known as HIDA. We're a government-funded program directly under the Executive Office of the President, and our mission is to eliminate drug trafficking here in Hawaii and abroad. It's a federal fund out of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and there's 33 HIDA regions throughout the nation. And to qualify and to become a HIDA region, you have to have the ominous notification that you have a drug problem in your particular state or region. And obviously, Hawaii has a drug problem, an epidemic problem, methamphetamine and now fentanyl, since 1999. So we've been a Hawaii HIDA designation since 1999.
Well, can you tell us what the status of the law is right now? A few years ago, I recall we allowed medicinal marijuana in the state, and we were going to look at how that would work, how that did work in order to determine what the next steps are. So how did it work?
My philosophy is that we have no opposition to the medicinal marijuana laws. If our medical field feels that there's a necessary element for medical marijuana, then so be it. We accept that. I accept that. I believe that there's been an increase in recreational marijuana since the inception of the medical marijuana law here in Hawaii.
And how about the industry? How about the medical marijuana industry? How is that doing? Do you know?
Well, it's being regulated out of the Department of Health. And I believe that the Department of Health is being overwhelmed. But more so, what's impacting medical marijuana is the illicit marijuana industry. Most people can't afford medical marijuana. And so the black market has taken over the medical marijuana supply. So what's being sold out there for medicinal purposes for those people that have licenses to use and to possess marijuana are really using illicit marijuana, and that's impacting the legalized medical marijuana industry.
No, I read that. If you have medicinal marijuana and you regulate it and all that, then people start using it in an unregulated fashion. And then, in fact, there's been an increase in unregulated, recreational marijuana. So what's the fallout from that? Are people walking around, under the spell? Are they driving under the spell? Is it changing their lives to be under the spell?
Oh, absolutely. All of the above. Whether it's medical marijuana patients using marijuana, and hopefully that they're using it for medicinal purposes. But marijuana in general is being used I don't like to use the word recreational. They're using it to get high. And when they get high from a potent form of marijuana, THC is the active ingredient that gets you high, you driving a car just as if you're driving under the influence of alcohol. Your senses, your perception, your ability to make decisions, your reflexes, are all impaired, which makes it a hazard for you to drive on our highways and our streets. And this is something that we can't control in law enforcement. We can somewhat test alcohol, blood alcohol concentration by breathalyzers and blood extraction, but we cannot test THC levels to determine impairment driving.
I hope that comes soon. That would be a real help for law
It's
enforcement.
not going to come soon and in the foreseeable future. There's no threshold establishments, BAC establishments, or BTHC establishments. Not even the Department of Transportation has standards. They're talking nanograms, which is microscopic. And remember, marijuana, THC, will stay in your system for up to 1 month. That's 30 days. So even though you might have a sample to determine how many nanograms are in a person's systems when arrested, that THC could have been from a month before. So this is something that we have no tools or no science at this point in time to determine THC impairment.
That's a problem. Back when there were a lot of growers in the islands, particularly in rural areas. I recall there were a lot of growers on the Big Island, Hawaii Island. Has the number of growers, illicit growers, changed?
We don't know. I don't think so. Professionally, I don't think so. I believe there's just as much illicit growing back from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and 2000, early 2000s, as there are today. In fact, there might even be more. The problem is law enforcement cannot afford to search for these marijuana patches, which are grown in remote areas, which are only accessible by walking into these areas or by helicopter, where you have to rappel down a rope from the helicopter, which is dangerous. And that's what law enforcement was doing back then when they were able to enforce marijuana cultivation laws. But now we have no federal funding to support local and state law enforcement. We don't even have a helicopter here to do that. If we are to do that, we would have to charter a helicopter, and that's extremely expensive. We're talking maybe $1,500 an hour for blade time, and you need at least 3 helicopters on a marijuana eradication mission.
It's dangerous in one other way. Like if you want to go hiking on a trail, you might run across some people who are growing illicit marijuana in the woods.
Absolutely.
And they're not friendly. They're very threatening, and sometimes they assault you because you're there, not because you're seeking them out, but because you're there. I'm sure you've heard lots of stories about that.
Absolutely. We're talking booby traps that our law enforcement had to encounter during these missions, these marijuana eradication missions. Our law enforcement personnel were risking their lives rappelling down a helicopter to the grounds where the patches were located, and they were being compensated for 25% hazardous pay, which, for risking your life for doing dangerous work. I personally have friends that have permanent medical injuries from falls or when a helicopter went down. So it's very dangerous work, and it's something that I give full credit to those law enforcement officers that did these eradication missions when law enforcement could afford it. Unfortunately, we can't do these missions anymore. We don't have the capability, the operational capability to eradicate illegal marijuana being grown in Hawaii. And that's a shame, because what's happening is that they're using forever chemicals to fertilize and pesticide these illegal marijuana grows in our indigenous forests. And you got to remember, marijuana is an invasive species. And so when you use dangerous chemicals, you threaten our forest land, you threaten our water system, and our water system all leads to our oceans, and you threaten our coral. So you're threatening the environment, our INA, when you use and grow marijuana products?
Gary, it strikes me that all the illicit marijuana is not being provided to the regulated industry. All of it is bypassing the regulation. Am I right?
Well, absolutely. Because it's illegal for them to grow, they're not going to get their marijuana registered at a specific threshold amount of THC content amount, or to meet the inspection qualities required by the Department of Health. They're selling it right out of their illegal black grow operations and dry houses. So they're skipping all inspections and taxations. They are going directly to the street consumer, and people are buying it because it's at a lower price, but it's at a high quality TH product.
Well, when we talked before about this, we talked about marijuana as a gateway drug. Can you discuss that?
I've been in law enforcement for 46 years. I began my career in California, state of California, in a correctional facility, maximum security prison facility for youthful offenders. And, 95% of them were substance abuse abusers. And when I would screen these inmates, out of the 95% of the population that had a drug problem, all began with marijuana. And so when you start with marijuana, I believe you have a propensity to lead to harder drugs. That's the reality, and I firmly believe that. I see that today, 46 years. I see that in Hawaii. I see that by talking to my colleagues at the treatment center. And I find that in Hawaii, our youth treatment facilities have done a complete reversal in intake. Maybe 20 years ago, maybe even as less as 10 years ago, the person that came into a treatment facility in Hawaii that was under the age of 18 was there for alcohol abuse, alcohol addiction. That's a total reversal today. Today's youth treatment facilities, 65% of the clientele is for THC or marijuana addiction or abuse. And that's compelling.
When I was in the service, this goes back a few years, there was a problem among the men and women on ships because they were, taking drugs of one kind or another, including marijuana. This affected the ability of the ship to do its job and the individual sailors to do their jobs. Is this still a problem? Is marijuana a problem in the military? Because we have plenty of military here.
Well, you hit it right on the nose. And in particular in Hawaii, out of any of the 50 other 49 states in the nation, Hawaii has all 5 branches of the military. We have 50,000 military personnel. We have the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and the Army. And so it's imperative. We have nuclear submarines at Pearl Harbor. So it's imperative that our military workforce refrains from using drugs and operates on an operational readiness for whatever reason they need to perform a military duty. It's life and death for the military. And so we work hand in hand with all branches of the military in my organization, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Organization, because our military realize that their workforce has to be drug-free.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the legislature for a minute. Let's talk about public policy. Let's talk about what changes are in the wings, or at least introduced. What bills are in play this session here in the 2025 session, Gary?
It's a repetitive bill to legalize, again, recreational marijuana. I do not believe in the term recreational marijuana, and to decriminalize the amount of marijuana. That's basically what's being introduced in the House now. And it's another situation where they'll sell you with, it's a profitable commodity for the government, for the Hawaii people. It'll make money for them to pay for schools, roads, and so forth. But it's not. It's offset by a tragic social consequence. And that's the environmental price tag, the social price tag, and the price tag on the future of our children. So you think you make money through taxation of marijuana, again, quote unquote, recreational marijuana. But no, we'll be suffering, multiplying that amount in the future and consequences.
So who is introducing these bills and who is supporting these bills and who is appearing, to testify in favor of these bills? Do you have a handle on that?
Yes, I do, but I don't want to discuss personal legislatures that are doing it. I would like to say that there are individuals who really, really have been pushing this every year, but I applaud those legislatures, both in the Senate and in the House, who are swinging towards common sense. Before, it was almost uh, uh, being passed for the legalization of marijuana. We came very close to becoming a legalized state. I think the 23rd legalized state in the nation, but we escaped that narrowly. I believe from last year until now, more senators and more House of Representatives are realizing that this is not a good thing for Hawaii. Not at all. This is not a good thing for our Hawaii children, our keiki. This is not a good thing for our environment. We are not going to make an offset of a profit off this. In the long run, we'll be paying more out of our tax dollars to curtail drug abuse, to curtail drug addiction, and to be suffering from a workforce that cannot do jobs because of the permanent organic effect of marijuana usage when you start at a young age. So I think we're gaining momentum on this. And we have to look at what happened in our nation in the November 2024 elections. North Dakota, South Dakota said no. They voted no against legalized marijuana. Florida voted no. They couldn't get enough votes to have the required threshold to legalize marijuana. So I think this is a pendulum that is swinging in our direction towards common sense, and that's no to legalized marijuana. Again, there's no such thing as recreational marijuana. Marijuana today will put you on your back and making you to the point where you have to concentrate on breathing. That's how some potency marijuana is being out there. So again, we need to say no. We got to keep the momentum growing.
So what do the doctors say? I'm sure that as in the medical marijuana legislation, they appeared, and some of them said it was a good idea. Others opposed it. What are the doctors saying on this recreational bill?
Well, that's why I feel that the pulse of the medical profession is right where the heartbeat of problems, and that's our emergency room, our emergency facilities. The emergency room doctors that I have talked to who deal with an array of drugs, methamphetamine abusers who are third generational. These are emergency physicians that are highly experienced. They remember their grandparents of the patients that they are receiving for drug abuse. What they're seeing in our emergency rooms is a high percentage of THC illnesses. And one of them is vomiting, induced vomiting, uncontrollable vomiting attributed to THC abuse. This is what our emergency room physicians are seeing and dealing with. And I believe they are the most important medical opinion in this particular subject.
Okay, and what about law enforcement? I guess I know what law enforcement's going to say, but I assume they're appearing on this issue because they're on the street. They're very close to what happens. But what kind of testimonies are they giving?
I've talked to law enforcement officers. I was a Maui Police Department police officer for 31 years. I was a police chief before I retired to take the job of the Hawaii Haida executive director, I was on the DUI task force back in the 1980s. And I remember stopping impaired drivers who were all over the road, and I couldn't detect any alcohol in their breath. They failed the sobriety field testing. I knew they were on something other than alcohol. I knew they were on THC, on marijuana. I can smell it. They didn't have any evidence in the car. And there was nothing I can do back in the mid 80s when I came across this. We're talking 2025 now. The same officers, law enforcement officers that I was back then in the mid 1980s, are suffering with the same consequence. They're stopping impaired drivers under the influence of what they believe is THC, and there's nothing they can do about it. There's no way of testing to find out if they are under the influence of THC. And unfortunately, they are going away scot-free. I mean, our officers are being faced with this every day, and this will increase with the passage of recreational marijuana.
Let's talk about the courts. This is something that should be of concern to the courts. There's in some counties, there are drug courts. How are the courts, how are the judges handling this? What do they say about it?
In my opinion, marijuana cases don't even reach the conviction level of usage in our Hawaii court systems. And that's twofold. The critics believe that we shouldn't have to put people in our criminal justice system for marijuana usage. And there's an argument to that. But the cases that go before the judge to determine whether or not this particular person deserves to go to drug court are usually for methamphetamine, for cocaine, for heroin, fentanyl. Those are the drugs that are being diverted into drug court opportunities.
And what about the industry itself? I recall having a certain level of concern about entrepreneurs coming to town and setting up medical marijuana companies who were from out of state, not local, trying to make a lot of money. Do they appear? Do they take a position on this? Are they trying to advance this bill for recreational marijuana?
I haven't talked in any medical marijuana operations, legalized medical marijuana operations that are from a mainland source. I've talked to medical marijuana operations that are locally based, run and operated and owned by local entrepreneurs. And they're against, the ones that I have talked to are against legalized marijuana. They believe that the product that they are producing is reputable and has a purpose to serve the medical marijuana community, period. They don't want legalized marijuana to come into the industry, not because it's a threat, because they know that'll increase the amount of black market marijuana here in Hawaii, and that will destroy whatever they are attempting to do in their philosophy, and that is to treat medical marijuana patients.
Gary, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you to address anyone who's involved in the issue, that is legislators, doctors, the public officials, law enforcement. Address them and tell them what, I think I know the answer on part of this. What do you think are the pros, if any, and the cons of adopting a recreational marijuana bill? And your views, if you could kind of address them and see that you could convince them of your view of the matter.
I've been in the criminal justice system, and what I'm doing now, I'm into other endeavors, including prevention and treatment, and that's why it's so important for me to exchange communication with those in the treatment field and the drug prevention field and the harm reduction field. We become friends, close friends. We might not also agree on the philosophies of drug abuse, and sometimes we're very, very far apart. But I developed my own consensus after 46 years of being involved in the criminal justice system, being involved in drug prevention, and working with people in drug treatment. And we're at the crossroads here in Hawaii of our destiny, our future, of being a well, productive, and beautiful society. When you legalize THC marijuana, you're saying our children don't care. You're telling our children, go ahead and use marijuana at a young age and understand the consequences that when you become an adult, statistics show that people that use medical marijuana or any type of marijuana under the age of 12 may suffer with a 1/3 lower IQ rating than the child that did not use marijuana. And that's compelling. That's putting that 1/3 population of marijuana users under the age of 12 into the borderline special needs mentality. And that's compelling to me because those children won't have a chance to have a productive life, all because organically their brains are suffering permanently where they won't be able to cope in a society like Hawaii and move forward and become our next generation.
I would add to that that ThinkTech has always supported the development of a tech industry here. And we haven't done very well at it, but of course it's very competitive, not only between Hawaii and other states, but between the United States and other countries. And if a young person is going to go to school and get involved in tech, that is a tremendous career. We want that. But if you can't think straight, if you're under the spell, you're not going to be able to do very well at that, either learning it or doing it for an occupation.
Based on my experience too, and that's why I don't know if these legislatures that are in favor of marijuana have gone to legalized states and talked to people on the streets and government and outside of government, the retailers, the community in itself. But when you legalize marijuana in Hawaii, be prepared to see people smoking, vaping, and inducing marijuana right before your eyes at the shopping center, at the restaurants, on the streets, and in the park. And to collectively see people gathering and living under this condition while you're living alongside. They will be your neighbors. They will be the people that you go out into the community. They will be in your beaches. They will be attracted throughout our nation and the world to come to Hawaii to live in this legalized environment. Be prepared for that. It's not a hidden drug intake. It's something that will be done publicly and you will smell it. You will consistently smell it. You will be in a hotel, in a poolside or whatever, but be prepared. Be prepared to be emulated by marijuana. That's the reality. And you're going to see people in groups, in groves, coming to Hawaii and becoming a marijuana lifestyle. And you're going to see children there too. You think we have a homeless problem, you're going to have a marijuana groupie problem too. And I've seen that. And that's going to damage the taxpayers who are going to have to give assistance to these people. They're going to have to feed these people. They're going to have to provide medical treatment for these people. That's what we're going to be attracting. So when you say legalize marijuana, you're going to be making people happy because they can get high, not in their homes. It'll be everywhere. And be prepared for that.
You have to say nothing of secondhand smoke, right? If you're sitting next to somebody, standing next to somebody who's having a toke, you're also breathing in that same smoke. Not good for you either.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we got to think, the social consciousness of our people in Hawaii, they're not out drinking alcoholic beverages in our streets yet. You don't see people walking around Ala Moana Boulevard with a beer can in their hand or a martini in their hand, but you will see people walking on Kalakaua Avenue, King Street, the University of Hawaii, smoking a joint, vaping THC, or inducing marijuana. You will see that. Absolutely. And so, again, we're at the crossroads. Again, our children's mentality, their IQ is at stake. There's studies that show that 12 years and under, if you use marijuana, you're going to have a lower IQ at a level where you won't be able to be a functional person, able to take care of yourself and provide a living. That's data, that's science data. And so the advocates say, well, we don't want the children to smoke marijuana. Well, when you legalize it for adults, you're saying yes for children to use it. And that's the reality. But be prepared. This action has already taken place in Colorado and parts of Oregon, where it's an absolute meth. And so, again, come to your senses, Hawaii. We only live here, the most beautiful places that I've seen in America. And I've been able to travel throughout the United States. There's no place as beautiful as Hawaii. Our culture comes from our island, our land, our seas, our mountain. That's all at stake with marijuana because people are going to be growing. There's an enhancement. There's this charisma, this charm about marijuana produced in Hawaii. From the 1970s, Maui Wowie, Kona Gold, we're a commodity should we grow marijuana. And it's a commodity because we can grow outdoor marijuana better than any other country or nation in the planet. And that's because of our beautiful sunshine, our rich soil, and our tremendous water source. But we're talking about destroying our indigenous, our native plants, our native forests, our water sources that run into the coral and destroying our coral. And when the land falls, our culture falls. And then we have nothing. So that's why I give my heart and soul to this cause. We're at the crossroads. We have to say no to marijuana, not just this legislative year, but every year. And thank you, North Dakota and South Dakota and Florida. Let's continue this trend. And thank you to those legislatures who are coming across and swinging towards our direction. Thank you.
As I said before, drug policy is an important social, medical, community, and legal issue. And it's very important that we and all cognizant government officials understand its pros and cons. Thank you so much, Gary, for helping us understand. Gary Yabuda of the Hawaii High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. I'm Jay Fidell, your host. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Aloha.
Aloha.